Hello, this is my new exotic border which I created over the weekend a couple of days ago. And these three plants here are the Chinese windmill palm, Trachycarpus Fortunei, also known as a Dioecious palm or a hemp palm. Hemp because of this stringy material it creates up its own trunks, which in some countries is removed to create rope or string and is made into hats and sacks. The name Trachycarpus Fortunei is made up of three elements. Trachy, meaning rough because of this really rough trunk. Carpus, meaning fruit because of the great big bulbous prehistoric looking fruits it produces at the top of these spikes. And Fortunei, after the plantsman and horticulturalist Robert Fortune. So there we have four names already for one plant, and it's important if you want to keep palms outside in the UK that you do choose the right one. Make sure you get Trachycarpus Fortunei because not all palms are hardy in the UK. This particular palm is hardy down to -15. I've had these three plants in pots on my patio for nearly 20 years. I've never had a problem with them. They're hardy down to -15 degrees centigrade. The one thing they don't like is strong winds, and they do tend to get wind damage at the end of the leaves here. That's just cosmetic. You can just cut that off with scissors or secateurs. And I've planted these out over the weekend, and I'm already considering putting some kind of windbreak across this gap here because that's where the prevailing wind comes from. They like free draining, well drained soil, and if you don't give them well drained soil they can suffer from a condition called root rot. So if you are keeping them in pots, it's important that you have plenty of drainage and crocks at the bottom of the pots. The trunks or stems of these plants are made from its own leaves, and you can see the remnants of its old leaves here all the way down to the bottom. And this stringy hemp material is actually the sheaths from the leaves which is left behind as the leaves erupt upwards. And what fascinates me about the design of these palm leaves is the fact that they're ribbed, and all those ribs point towards the centre. So when you have a rainstorm, which we get quite frequently in the UK, the rain falls down and is guided down those leaves into the centre of the plant, and you can often see it trickling down towards the root ball. So there, Mother Nature or evolution or natural selection, call it what you will, has designed a way of this plant getting its fair share of water towards its roots. And no doubt particulates and dust and organic material will also land on these leaves and be guided down and feed the plant. They don't really need much feeding unless they're in pots. These plants will easily take care of themselves now they're in the ground. As far as pruning is concerned, well, they don't really need any pruning. Eventually the dead leaves will just fall away. I've pruned these just for cosmetic reasons, just to give it a nice, straight, erect, clean trunk. You can also prune these damaged leaf tips if you wish. That's just cosmetic. That won't harm the plant. It has very few pests in the UK, and because it's so hardy, it's a great plant to start off with if you want to create an exotic looking border. The leaves erupt like a spike here out of the centre, and they erupt upwards, spiking towards the sky, and then they open up into a hand shape, and as I've already said, that hand creates a kind of bowl effect which guides all the water down the trunk. In terms of propagation, these plants are what's known as dioecious. What does dioecious mean? Well, it means that one plant will be male and another will be female, and you have to have one of each naturally for it to propagate. And you can tell the difference because the male plant has a yellow flower and the female plant has a green flower. And I know this is a male one because every year this produces a great big beautiful yellow flower covered in little tiny seeds. These other two have not yet flowered, so I don't really know whether they're male or female. I'm hoping that at least one of them will be a female so that I can have a chance at propagating them. And if you are lucky enough to have a male and female mature plant and they do end up propagating themselves, then what you need to do is gather the seeds up at the end of the season, put them into a moist, airtight container, store them for up to 3 months at a temperature at or around 25 degrees centigrade, and eventually, if you're lucky, you'll end up with lots of little seedlings which you can then plant out into well-drained gritty soil. Despite the fact that it's called the Chinese windmill palm, it's not clear whether it actually came from China. Could have come from Japan, but we do know them as the Chinese windmill palm. As you can see, at the base of mine, I've covered the soil in a weed control membrane with gravel and some nice round boulders, and that has several benefits. Clearly, the membrane will prevent the weeds, which would act as competition for the plants. It would also act as a moisture retentive mulch, which will help the root ball stay moist in the hot summer months. The weight of these rocks will act as anchors and keep the plants well rooted into the ground. And during the summer months, these rocks will heat up in the direct sunlight and act as radiators all through the night and create a nice ambient temperature around the plants. Not only that, they look really good and give it a really kind of exotic, almost Mediterranean feel. They don't really have any natural pests in the UK. That wind burn is just cosmetic, it doesn't do any harm to the plant. And because they are hardy, down to -15 degrees, they're a great starter plant if you want to create this really exotic feel. This stringy hemp-like material around the trunk, the husk or the sheaths from the leaves, is great for retaining the moisture into the trunk and also providing insulation during the winter. And the birds love it. You'll see them in the springtime coming along and taking bits away, clearly taking it away to make nests. Who knows, that might be another way that this plant has evolved for spreading seeds, because the birds might come and take the seeds, take them to another place where they'll germinate. You can see that by planting 3 here together, I've almost given the impression of a little windmill palm forest. Sometimes you see what appear to be multi-stemmed windmill palms, but in actual fact there's no such thing as a multi-stemmed plant. These only ever have a single plant, and in those instances it's probably the case that 2 seeds have germinated very close together and grown up together next to each other. No pruning is required per se. I have pruned the dead leaves off this plant, but it would eventually fall away of their own accord. But I just do that for cosmetic reasons, to give it a nice vertical erect trunk. You can also prune away with scissors or secateurs this windburn. If you're keeping them in pots, you can replace some of the soil on an annual basis, you can top dress them, and you can feed them with a slow release fertiliser. In the ground, they'll take care of themselves. Just keep them watered, but not waterlogged, to avoid that root rot which I spoke of earlier. So there you go, my new exotic border and everything I know about Trachycarpus Fortunei. I hope you found that helpful and useful and informative. Please do like and share, because it helps me get the video promoted on YouTube. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications bell. Also do comment below this video. Have you got one of these? Have you got any comments or questions or observations? And I'll see you soon.